That's not wood smoke.
Then what is it?
The end. Or how it begins, anyway.
Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered Edition is finally out today, guys, and we're going to check it out on an RTX 4090 Ryzen 7800X3D at 4K. We'll look at native resolution, some DLSS upscaling. We'll also take a look at some FSR and DLSS frame generation, and also point out a couple issues that I saw that should be getting patched, I would assume. Biggest issue is, well, as you notice, there's a bit of flickering and flashing happening here, and it was only in this area. This is right after a battle that we're going to take a look at soon. Now this is towards the end of the game. I've loaded a save file that's right at the end before the big boss fight, the big event. But roaming the wilds, I checked out the wilds. We're going to take a look at the big main city as well. I didn't see that flashing happening, only that sometimes high resolution assets can kind of load right in front of you when you travel with a mount. I don't recall that being the case in Horizon Forbidden West, but maybe it didn't stand out to me. I also noticed that there are some areas that can be quite CPU heavy, like the city of Meridian. So we're going to set DLSS to performance here, just out of curiosity. And with the 7800X3D, we seem to be good for around 120 FPS, but it can drop even below that. As you can see, we're right at around 195 to 100 FPS here in the city of Meridian. Clearly, we're CPU bound with the GPU utilization dropping into the low 90s, sometimes even high 80s. Now, maybe there are other areas where it could be heavier. I don't know, but this is kind of what stood out to me. But I also have to say that I was kind of surprised by how good DLSS performance actually looked at 4K. And here again, you can see the high resolution assets, or the shadows for the foliage, loading in pretty close to you. So that is kind of strange. I mean, am I seeing things? I don't know. Leave a comment down below and let me know. But let's take a look at native 4K. So I'm using my LG C1 OLED TV here, and I just want to start with TAA. I've gone ahead and maxed all the graphical settings, and I've disabled vignette and a couple other things that are just personal preferences, shouldn't impact the performance much. Now, as far as load files, like I said, I actually never finished Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition. I got right at the end, right before the big main boss fight. So this is a good opportunity for me to finish it and even do the DLC. But yeah, let's take a look at 4K native. And it looks like the game looks absolutely gorgeous. But the city of Meridian itself seems to be one of the more demanding and heavy areas. Seem to be good for around 90 FPS. And if you actually pay close attention to the GPU utilization, it does actually become CPU bound in a few cases. But if we go outside the city and into the wild, we seem to be very close to 100 FPS. Now, if I remember correctly, I believe Horizon Forbidden West was right around the same FPS. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think for Horizon Forbidden West, maybe a little bit better optimized. But other than that, though, I mean, the assets look quite a bit better compared to the original. And the cutscenes, the models themselves look really nice. Check this out.
Huh. So you must be Aloy then.
More of me.
Thicker, I suppose. More of a gear wheel, less of a ringlet. Don't get me wrong, you're very well struck.
Do all Oseram flirt at the most inopportune times?
Inopportune? Battle hasn't even started yet.
Well, anyway, I guess to wrap up the native resolution part, I would say the 4090s here seems to be good for, I would say, average 100 to 110 FPS. I think that's fair to say. And that is very similar to Horizon Forbidden West as well, which kind of makes sense because games actually do look quite similar. But let's take a look at DLSS quality and some combat.
Aloy, no!
We need those guns!
He will cut you down!
Not this time!
I've gone ahead and set DLSS to quality here right before the battle. And this is actually where you fight, not the main bad guy, but one of them. And forgive me because I'm actually very rusty. I haven't played this game since like 2021. That was the last time I played this area. And there's quite a lot of enemies. Again, this is end game essentially. but I wanted to check it out. With DLSS set to quality here, we don't seem to get a ton of FPS. Again, it's because we are quite CPU bound in a lot of scenarios. If you look at the GPU utilization, you'll see we just dropped to the mid to high 80s of percent. So we are actually in the city of Meridian, and there's quite a few enemies that we're battling here. But yeah, we seem to be good at around 120 FPS. So really the only way to get a lot more FPS would have to be through frame generation. Now, in case you haven't noticed, which I don't see how you couldn't, but it was here that that flashing issue started that I pointed at the beginning of the video. Now, I don't know if it has something to do with this event, because the endgame event is pretty big. You have to do quite a lot of things, set things in motion, essentially prepare different outposts for the event. And it's not until this part that the flashing begin to happen. So it's probably going to be one of those things that the developers have to just, you know, touch up and tweak and bring things up to date. But I didn't really notice it anywhere else, so. But either way, the fact remains that with DLSS quality here, we're not really getting a lot out of it because we are clearly CPU bound. So I think this might be a good time to check out DLSS frame generation and take a look at FSR frame generation for a brief moment as well. And let's check out Evil Aloy.
Chosen. Hades only chose you because you're a fool. A sadistic butcher too stupid to see you were being used. Your whole life was a failure. And soon, no one will even remember you. Turn your face to the sun and think about that!
Damn, Aloy. You know, I think that reaction is actually very accurate to lore, I feel, because she goes through a lot of stuff to get to where she is now. And that guy in particular, he was an asshole. So he deserved that completely. But anyway, let's take a look at frame generation. All right, so we moved on to the next stage of the end game here. And at 4K with DLSS set to quality, we're getting 100 FPS in this area. So let's go ahead and turn on frame generation and see how much more we can get. We're going to start with DLSS frame generation. There is, of course, FSR frame generation, just like Horizon Forbidden West. It's very similar, guys. It looks very similar, performs very similar. And we go from 110 to 125, 30. So not a massive bump, right? I mean, I would say about 25 to 30% gain in frames. But what about FSR frame generation? There are some cases where FSR frame generation can actually generate a bit more frames, even on an Nvidia GPU. But that doesn't really seem to be the case here, because we were getting 125 to 130 with DLSS frame generation, and using FSR frame generation instead, we seem to get around 115 FPS. So that's about a 15% gain over DLSS quality alone. So obviously it makes sense to use DLSS frame generation. Although I am actually curious to see how the 7900 XTX does with FSR frame generation, because AMD GPUs can actually generate more frames with FSR frame generation versus the Nvidia ones with FSR frame generation and the same exact settings. At least that's been the case for a couple games that I've taken a look at. But it's worth mentioning, however, what I'm noticing here is the power consumption on the 4090 is quite low. And again, it was the same thing with Forbidden West. So I'm not sure why, but it's almost like the GPU is not being fully utilized, and that can be due to being CPU bound. But again, it just seems rather low for whatever reason. But anyway, guys, I think that's going to be it for this video. At the top of the mountain is going to be pretty much the final boss, the main villain of the game. And I don't really want to spoil any more than I actually have. I do intend to finish the game, and I actually want to check out the Frozen Wilds. I actually like snowy type of scenarios, so I look forward to checking that out as well. I heard decent things about it. I do want to complete the story. I think you should check out the game if you haven't. I personally think the story is more captivating and more interesting than the sequel. But the sequel's pretty good too. But yeah, that's going to be it for the video, guys. Give it a like if you liked it. Consider subscribing. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And I will see you on the next one. We got quite a few more games to take a look at, actually. Monster Hunter and Dragon Age Veilguard. Oh boy.
Aloy! It's Aloy! Well, you can see that. We thought you'd fallen at the ridge.
No, the ridge fell on me. Look, there isn't a lot of time left. I have to face Hades.
Not alone.
It's my fight. I can't ask you to come with me.
We were about to go over the top anyway, right? Right.
Hawk and Thrush, let's go.
I should stock up.